Hey folks, except for the binding, this is finished. I want to talk to y'all about perfectionism. I think learning to free motion quilt is a really good cure for perfectionism. I always called myself a recovering perfectionist. Because if it wasn't good enough, I just didn't I had to pull it all out, and I'd get frustrated and I'd quit. And I started quilting in the 80s, the mid 80s, hand quilting, hand piecing and hand quilting. My husband during his Air Force career bought a machine, an old Kenmore machine. But guess what? He's the only one that used it. He sewed his stripes on his uniforms. I had almost a machine phobia, okay? Well, I've quilted for a lot of years. And about 10 years ago, I'm guessing, I'd have to actually go look it up, I began having a lot of carpal tunnel, tingling and numb fingers when I would hand quilt. And it was getting more and more unpleasant. And of course, it takes a long time to hand quilt a quilt. You can't do the intricate designs. I mean, if you try to do intricate designs like you can machine quilt them, it'll take you years to finish. But I'm favoring I've smashed my finger in something until it's all swollen and purple. Nice swollen purple. I pinched it in a folding handle. Anyway, at least it was my left hand, not my right hand. Anyway, this quilt, this was really my foray back into really kind of extensive machine quilting. I tried to quilt. The other thing I did was kind of red and green, and I don't know, I still haven't put binding on that one. But I was thinking, a lot of people would be very frustrated when they start to learn to free motion quilt, because free motion quilting involves matching the speed at which you're moving the quilt sandwich, which is the two layers of quilting and the batting, moving that through the machine and basically drawing on the quilt with your needle and thread. And just learning to match your speed of your hands to the machine so that you don't whir around corners too fast and make little, what they call eyelashes on the back of your stitches. It makes very odd stitches. When you learn to do that, your stitches become much more even because it's only you controlling your stitch length. And it's a skill that takes a lot of practice. Someone can say, here's tips on how to free motion quilt, and here's what you do, and this is the way you do a swirl, and this is the way you do this flower, and this is the way you do paisleys, but they can't practice for you. And knowing all the tips and knowing the book mechanics of how to do it, it's not going to help you unless you spend a lot of hours and persevere and practice. But the practice is fun. Don't let it become frustrating to you, because nobody needs to see your so-called mistakes other than you. The way to do it is get you 2 pieces of fabric, put some very thin batting in between. I would suggest a very low loft cotton or cotton blend batting, very thin batting, so it looks flat, because it will make it easier to seamlessly push the whole quilt sandwich through under the machine, under the foot. But a lot of people want a free motion quilt, but they just, and they may try one time thinking, how did you do this, and quit. Because it doesn't look like, they can't seem to control the shapes they're trying to make or what they see in their head. That's common, happens to us all the time. Like I said, I started learning to machine quilt on YouTube. A lot of my early teachers were Melanie Ham, who is now no longer with us. God bless her. She died almost 2 years ago now, well, a year and a half ago. Only 36 years old. One of the most giving, beautiful people on YouTube. A great quilting teacher, good crochet teacher. But I learned a lot from Melanie about 7-8 years ago when she first started her channel. Leah Day, who does a massive amount of free motion quilting videos. And she does it on machines with tiny little throat space. The throat space is the distance between the side of the machine on the right and the needle, where the needle goes into the fabric. the smaller the throat space, the harder it is to move larger projects through that. You have to pack it and fold it and, scrunch it and all that kind of stuff. But, I learned from a lot of really good teachers. Angela Walters. Oh my gosh, Angela Walters. Quilting is my therapy, Angela Walters. She's an amazing teacher. Well, I learned from a lot of these women, but they couldn't do the practice for me. I had to practice. And it takes a lot of thread, and it takes knowing your machine first, and it takes a lot of thread. And thread, believe it or not, thread is pretty expensive. I prefer polyester thread. It doesn't make as much lint inside your machine. You have to clean out that bobbin case all the time. But it doesn't make as much lint inside your machine as, say, cotton thread does. A good quality polyester thread like Glide or Isocord, which is an embroidery thread actually. Glide or Isocord, or I think there's one called Omni. There's King Tut threads. These are very good quality threads, and they're very expensive. But not when you get the big cones. Anyway, when you're making your shapes, when you're starting to glide that through and you think you're going to make a swirl and your swirl ends up lopsided, and let me tell you, it may not all be your fault. Sometimes it's if something happens to your thread or the machine pulls back or you don't have enough room to put it through the throat of the machine, it can mess up your stitches, because if you're going forward and something glitches and you go like that, so does your stitch on the quilt. You have to learn to forgive yourself for those little boo-boos, because even if you got really good, and I've watched Angela Walters lately and a lot of other teachers, and even the people who've done this for years, their shapes are not always perfect. In fact, they're rarely perfect. And even if you were really experienced, you can make no two circles alike, no two swirls alike, no two flowers alike, no two paisleys alike, no two anything alike, because you're a human being, and it's all up to you. Quilt motifs are kind of like snowflakes. No two are alike, even the same, what you're trying to do, the same exact one. They're all going to vary. You can't bring perfectionism into your sewing room with you. Let me just say, this is full of what people would call mistakes, okay? Yes, I haven't been doing it for a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and I'm getting back in the swing of things. But I've done it enough that I'm kind of back to where I was. I'm back to the level at which I was when I quit and put it aside. And still, there's some shapes, there are some motifs I had terrible trouble with. There's one called ribbon candy. If you know ribbon candy, I am terrible at ribbon candy. I suck at ribbon candy. I suck at flowers. Let me see. Flowers. These flowers here. They're terrible. If you look at them closely as a unit. But if you back off and look at this quilt as a whole, all you see is a heavily quilted with lots and lots of designs, and it's very interesting to read a quilt, to look at a quilt with all these different designs on it, and pick out where they are, which ones they are. See how many different designs you can pick out on it. Free motion quilting, and I would suggest maybe you put earbuds, I guess they call them. Yeah, I usually don't like to do that because I like to hear my surroundings, but occasionally I'll put those in so that all I hear is whatever music I'm going to listen to, calming music, so I can quilt without the disturbance of whatever's around me. But the actual process of free motion quilting and learning it can be so relaxing. And then you make these quilt sandwiches. Make one that's like 15 by 15. The front, the back, the batting. You could put them together with temporary basting spray, which is what I normally do. And then I pin it in addition to that. Make some quilt sandwiches. Decide you're going to practice paisleys or something. Or swirls. Let's see. This right here. This design right here. Somebody called it leaves. It's round. They call it round leaves because of the little stem looking things in the center. This is just like a paisley with a little so it looks like a stem. I bordered this with leaves, a chain of leaves, okay? But pick out a design or two you want to practice on that quilt sandwich and get started doing that. Oh, you remember the old Nike thing, just do it? Well, just do it. Of course, you have to have a quilting foot that allows you to see your stitches. You need, they might call it free motion foot or darning foot. I've seen some people use feet that they just could see with. They could see through like a clear foot that wasn't technically a darning foot or a free motion foot, but they're still using it as long as you set your stitch length to 0 if you can on your machine. Sometimes I can't on my machine. One of them does that and one won't for some reason. Set your stitch length to 0. Make your presser foot pressure really almost nothing, and check your tension. I'm not going to go into tension problems and all that kind of stuff here. I'm just trying to encourage you to learn and that you can make beautiful things without them being what you would call perfect. I'll show you the back of this. Hang on. Okay, this is just the backing right here. This cabin fabric right there. Okay. I just happen to have that. But there are so many things that you can try. Okay, these here. Let me see. These here. Paisleys, one of my favorite things to do. I love paisleys. And all it is that, and then what you call echo. Means you go around a previously quilted line as many times as you want. It fills up space. The point is to fill up the space. And you can use the same design in a space, like I did all paisleys here, or you can do something else. One of the easiest things to do, in my opinion, see if I can find one here, is this. And I showed you this in my other video. I was doing this on the video. In here, the lines, make one line and come back and echo the line and keep echoing the line until you fill up the space. That's one of the easiest free motion exercises to do. Just practice filling up the space. So yeah, I just don't want you to get discouraged if you are trying to learn it and you're like, I can't do this as good as she does, as good as he does. I've been doing this for almost 10 years, self-taught. It's like I say, I'm a self-taught fumbler. I've gotten a lot better. I'm not nearly as good as some people. You know, some people do it better than others. And there are some shapes I think, I can't do those. Guess what? You don't have to do those. You can do the ones that you're good at. And if you want to learn it, you just set your mind to learning it, just like I did free motion quilting. If I had not learned free motion quilting, I would have had to put down my quilt hobby permanently because of tingling and numb fingers. Just the way it is. Let me put this back up here. Anyway, so set your perfectionism aside and just know, you may look at this swirl you just made and think, this is lopsided. You know what? Echo, echo, echo. Keep making the lines around it. Keep doing that. Pretty soon, your little bauble is going to get lost inside all the lines, and the overall effect is what they're going to see. And it will make something beautiful in the end. You do get better with practice. You've got to persevere. You've got to set your mind that this is really something you want to learn to do. That's what I did. I really want to learn to do this. I don't want to lose my hobby. I love quilts. I don't want to lose my hobby. I don't want to lose that creative process where I design and I can pick colors and I can design and I can look for a mood, and you know, I can actually, the design process is very interesting to me. Everything I do is not done from a pattern. It's just, you know, even if you're using a quilt block that's well known, it's still yours. Did you design the colors in it? Did you design the quilt? Did you do your own quilting? Your way of quilting it? It's yours. There's no patent on these things. It is yours. everything I do, I've designed quilts. One of my favorite ways to design a quilt is start from the center. A center medallion, sort of like I have kind of outlined right here, and I quilted all inside of this in the center. But you can piece a medallion. It's just the center focus of the quilt, and I would go out from there. Every layer, every round, every border would be different. It would be pieced, or it'd be just a strip of plain fabric, and I would go out from there. And every quilt that I do like that is a mystery until I get to the very end of it, because I design as I go, and that's what I've always done. But anyway, please don't let perfectionism and frustration and comparison to other people stop you. Let them teach you, but don't think, oh, I'll never get as good as that, because you don't need to be an imitation of somebody else. There's a saying, comparison is the thief of joy. And I seem to remember I got that saying many years ago from Angela Walters. Her grandfather taught her how to quilt. Her grandfather. He only used solid color fabrics. He never used printed fabrics. But her grandfather taught her how to quilt. And see, I told you men do quilt. I told you. And there is a channel, the Quilting Marine. I think it's a retired Marine. I don't know if he's retired or if he just was in the Marines for a couple tours. He does quilts. He's a big, tall, black guy, so you know you got the right channel. It's a big, tall, black guy, and he does really nice quilts. So, and he's a Marine. Come on. So, yeah, it's a good hobby. You can spend a lot on it, or you can spend a little on it. You have to have basic equipment if you're going to machine quilt, obviously. The bigger the throat space, the more expensive the machine. Trust me. But if you already have one, do a small project. You got to learn a lot before you can do a big quilt. So that's all I want to tell you. Have a great day. Hope that you got something out of this talk, and my battery's about to go dead. Bye.